Hello students, welcome to this lecture. This online lecture is conducted by Rayat Shikshan Samstha's Sadguru Gadge Maharaj College Karad under the ROSE project. Myself, Mrs. Zadge SR, conducting here the fifth lecture of the topic Origin and Evolution of Life. In previous lecture, we have seen the concepts, that is natural selection, the different types of natural selection, then the speciation, the different types of speciation, Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, and adaptive radiation. Now, in this today's fifth lecture, we are going to see the next concepts from this topic. Those are here. The first concept, that is evidences of organic evolution. And from that, firstly we have to see the paleontological evidences which are showing some records of fossil and the connecting link. Then evidences from comparative anatomy. From that we have to study homologous, analogous and vestigial organs. And thirdly we have to see the molecular evidences. So in this today's fifth lecture we are going to see the different kinds of evidences which were observed or which were discovered with the course of this evolution. So let us start here. The first point of our today's discussion, that is evidences of organic evolution. Here the process of evolution is supported by evidences which was provided by the various branches of biology. So in previous 3 to 4 lectures we have seen how the evolution is occurring and what are the different theories which was put forth by different scientists that evolution is occurred in this manner. And to prove or to study the complete process of evolution, we have to see some evidences, and these are here. The first branch of biology which is showing evidence, that is known as the paleontological evidences. Secondly, evidences from the comparative anatomy. Third, molecular evidences. So one by one we have to discuss all these points related to the evidences of organic evolution. Let us start here. The first point, that is known as the paleontological evidences. Here the study of ancient life with the help of fossils is known as the paleontology. That paleontology is a branch of science which deals with the study of fossils which were present in the ancient life, and that branch is known as the paleontology. What is meant by fossil? So fossils are defined as the dead remains of the plants and animals that lived in the past in various geological layers. That means the organisms which are present or which were present in the past, those organisms dead parts we can observe in different geographical areas and in different geological layers. Those dead parts or the dead remains are known as here fossils, and these fossils are formed in the sedimentary rocks, umber, that is yellowish fossils resin, ice, peat bogs, etc. So in ancient life the fossils were formed in the sedimentary rocks, umber, that is known as the yellowish fossils resin, in ice we can observe the fossils, and in peat bogs we can observe the fossils. The fossils are of 4 types, as we can see. The first type, it is known as the actual remains. The second type, that is known as the molds. Then third type, it is known as the casts, and the fourth type, that is known as the compressions. So totally in these paleontological evidences we can observe these 4 different types. One by one we have to discuss the details about these fossil types. The first, that is known as the actual remains. The first type of fossil, actual remains, it is a very most common type of fossil we can observe, and in this type the plants, animals and human bodies got embedded in the permafrost of the Arctic or alpine snow remain preserved in the actual state. So actual remains means actual plant part or actual animal part or the human body part is directly getting embedded into the snow, that is known as the permafrost of the Arctic or alpine snow, and it is preserved in that snow in the actual state. For example, here woolly mammoth in the Siberia. In Siberia, woolly mammoth, the type of elephant that actual remain fossil we can observe. And in this type of fossil, amber or hardened resin contains preserved bodies of many insects and arthropods. So the example of actual remain we can see here. This is the woolly mammoth in the Siberia. This is the actual fossil which was evidenced from this Siberia. Actual body part of this woolly mammoth, that is a type of elephant, we can observe. This is the first type of fossil. Then second we can observe here molds. This is here, these are the hardened encasements formed in the outer parts of the organic remains which later decayed living cavities. Means here this type of fossils are not present actual body form, but they are getting hardened encasement, means the outer covering of these body parts are hardened and the inner part is decayed and only outer part is remaining showing cavities. And hence here body parts of plants or animals later decays but impression still remains and become permanent. So actual body part we can't observe in this type of fossil, but the impression of that actual body part we can observe in such type of fossil. For example, footprints. Example you can see in the diagram. This is a footprint of one animal we can observe, and it is known as the mold type of fossil because here actual body part is not present, but it is showing hardened outer part which is remaining as it is, and the inner part is becoming decayed. Okay, so this is the second part of fossil. Then the third part of fossil or the third type of fossil, that is known as the cast. Cast means they are hardened pieces of mineral matter deposited in the cavities of mold. Mold type of fossils firstly formed, and after some years the cavities of molds getting deposited with the help of hardened pieces of mineral matter, and such fossil formed by the filling of these cavities of mold, that is known as the cast. So you can see here the both types of fossil we can observe. The first type, it is known as the mold. You can see here this is first type mold that just we have seen, and when the cavity of this mold, you can see here this is the cavity of the mold, and this cavity is getting filled with the mineral matter, or it is getting deposited with the help of the mineral matter, and you can see here it is looking like this type is known as the cast. So both the fossils are same, molds and cast, but the difference is that in molds we can observe the cavities and in cast there will be no cavity. Okay, and the last type of this fossil is the compression. Here internal structure is absent, but a thin carbon film indicates the outline of the external features. Means here the actual fossil is showing only a thin carbon film, that is the outline of external feature. Internal structure is getting absent. So here you can see this is example of the leaf of fern leaf. The example you can see here, actual leaf is not present here in this fossil, but the impression or the thin carbon film, it is showing external features of this leaf. Such type of fossil it is known as the compression. Okay, so in this way the four types of fossils we can observe during the study of these paleontological evidences, that is actual remains, molds, casts and compression. With the help of these four types of fossils we can study the different evidences, and we can say that the evolution is occurring from past to future. Okay, now the related to these paleontological evidences we have to see the significance. The first very important significant is that it is useful in reconstructing the phylogeny, that is the evolutionary history of the organism. So when the different kinds of fossils we can discover from the different geographical areas or the different geological layers, afterwards we can use this information or this evidence for reconstructing the phylogeny, that means the evolutionary history of the organism. Okay, next it is helping in the studying of various other forms and the structure of extinct animals. So with the help of these paleontological evidences we can study the different body forms or the different organisms body forms and the structure of extinct animals by using the evidences. Then fossil is helping in the understanding of the habit of extinct organism. So where the fossil was discovered, accordingly we can understand here the habit of the extinct organism, or according to the structures which were present in that evidence, accordingly we can identify here the habit of extinct organism. Then some of the fossil record are providing the missing link or connecting link between the two groups of organisms. That means there are some organisms, or there were some organisms which are present in the past, and those are showing missing link or connecting link between the two group of organisms, and therefore some fossil records are helping us to connect the link between the two group of organisms. So these are the significance of the paleontological evidences, and from that we have to study the details about the connecting link. The evidence connecting link we have to study in the detail here. So what is meant by connecting link here? A connecting link is defined as an intermediate or transitional stage between two organisms. It is also called as the missing link. So during the study of this paleontology, some organisms are showing intermediate or transitional stage between the two organisms. Such are known as here missing link or connecting link. For example, here we can see the organism Ichthyostagia. It is a missing link between the fish and amphibian. That means this Ichthyostagia is showing characteristics of both fish and amphibian, and therefore Ichthyostagia is known as the connecting link between fish and amphibian. Second example, Semoria. It is a missing link or connecting link between the amphibians and reptiles. That means Semoria is showing characteristic features of both amphibians and reptiles. And third example here, Archaeopteryx. It is the connecting link between the reptiles and birds. So in this way, these are the different examples which we can call it as a connecting link or missing link. Ichthyostagia, it is in between fish and amphibian. Semoria, it is between amphibian and reptiles. Archaeopteryx, it is between reptiles and birds. From these three examples, we have to study the details about this third example, that is Archaeopteryx. That means how the Archaeopteryx is considered as the connecting link between reptiles and birds, that we have to see here. So Archaeopteryx lithographica, this is the name of this organism, and here it is fossilized crow-sized toothed bird found from the Jurassic rocks in the Germany. So the fossil of this Archaeopteryx lithographica, that is crow-sized toothed bird, that means it is crow-sized toothed bird, and the fossil was found from the Jurassic rocks in the Germany, and it was known as the missing link between reptiles and birds because it shows the characters of both. Let us see the characteristics of this Archaeopteryx, how the organism was. So you can see in this picture, this is a picture of Archaeopteryx lithographica. You can see here, this is looking like bird, but it is showing some characteristics of the reptile. So here we can see both the characteristics of this Archaeopteryx lithographica. Firstly, we have to see the reptilian characteristics. In this Archaeopteryx lithographica, which characteristics are observed, which are reptilian characteristics, that we have to see. The first reptilian character, that is presence of long tail. So you can see here, this is the presence of long tail. Then claws are present and scales on the body. So you can see here on the forelimb and hind limb, the digits are showing claws. Okay, and on the body scales we can observe. So these are the reptilian characteristics we can observe in this Archaeopteryx. Secondly, single-headed ribs. When we study the internal structure of this Archaeopteryx, we can observe the ribs in the thoracic region are showing single-headed structure, that is reptilian characteristic, and abdominal ribs are present which look like ribs of crocodile. The ribs which are present in the abdominal region are just looking like the crocodile. This is the reptilian characteristic, and jaws are showing homodont teeth. So these are the teeth in present in the inside the jaws, and these all teeth are of the same type, that is known as the homodont. This is also reptilian characteristic. Then sternum without keel. Sternum, that is the chest bone or breast bone, that is present inside the body of this Archaeopteryx. It is showing without keel structure. So these are the reptilian characteristics. And bones are solid, that is non-pneumatic. Means the bones which are present inside the body of this Archaeopteryx are not hollow. That means not pneumatic, but they are solid. Okay. Then hind limbs are having 4 clawed digits. Hind limbs means these are the hind limbs, and these are showing 4 clawed digits, which we can observe in the all reptilian members. Okay, in wall lizard, in garden lizard, or in any other reptilian example, we can observe these characteristics, and hence here Archaeopteryx are showing these reptilian characteristics. Now we have to see the characteristics which we can observe in the avian. So avian characteristics of the Archaeopteryx, the first is known as the feathery exoskeleton. In birds, we can observe the feathery exoskeleton. Likewise here in the Archaeopteryx also we can observe here feathery exoskeleton. You can see here these are the feathers. Then forelimbs are modified into wings. So you can see here this is one forelimb and this is second forelimb. Forelimbs are modified into wings. This is the characteristic features of the aves. Then jaws are modified into beak. So here you can see this is the beak. You can observe in the mouth region. So beaks are present instead of jaws. Then skull bone is completely fused. So while observing the skull of this Archaeopteryx, we can observe the skull bone is the completely fused. Then large rounded cranium, brain box. Cranium means brain box, and it is large rounded, just like in bird we can observe. Then cranium is showing large orbits and a single condyle. In aves or in birds, we can observe the cranium with large orbit and single condyle. In the same way here, in Archaeopteryx also we can observe this characteristic feature. Then limb bones are bird-like. The limb bones, forelimb bones and hind limb bones are looking like bird-like structure. Then hind limbs with 4 toes. First toe is opposable. Here you can see the structure of these hind limbs. From these 4 toes are there. Out of that, first toe is opposable, that we can observe in the birds. So these are the different characteristic features which were like the birds or aves, and hence here from the above study it is very clear that birds are evolved from the reptiles, and Julian Huxley justified that these birds, calling birds as a glorified reptiles. So here Huxley scientist called these birds as a glorified reptiles, and here this Archaeopteryx, it is known as the connecting link between the reptiles and birds, because it is showing the characteristics of both the group, that is reptile group and aves group. Okay, so this is all about the connecting link and the first evidence, paleontological evidences. Now we have to see the second type of evidence, that is evidences from comparative anatomy. Here the organisms exhibit similarities indicating a common origin after studying comparative anatomy. That means when we study the comparative anatomy of the organisms, we can see that there is a similarity in the characteristic features, anatomical features, and that is indicating a common origin. So there are 3 aspects of these evidences. The first is known as the homologous organs, second is known as the analogous organs, and third is known as the vestigial organs. So from this comparative anatomy we can observe these 3 types of organs, and accordingly we can say here the evidence which was related to this evolution. So firstly we have to see the comparative information about these both homologous and analogous organs. So let us start here the comparative anatomy evidence. The homologous organs and analogous organs we have to study here comparative manner. The organs which are structurally similar but functionally dissimilar are called as a homologous organs. So remember that the organs which are structurally similar but functionally dissimilar are known as the homologous organs. But here in analogous organs, reverse or opposite, we can see the structurally dissimilarity is there but functionally similar. These are known as the analogous organ. Means the organs which are structurally dissimilar but functionally similar, those are known as the analogous organ. So you have to remember both of these definitions properly, because in the examination the questions were asked on this point. So structurally similar are known as the homologous and structurally dissimilar are known as the analogous. Okay, for example, here forelimbs of frog, lizard, bird, bat, whale, man, these are the examples of the homologous organs which are structurally similar but they are functionally dissimilar. And in analogous, the example is wings of birds and insects. As we know, the birds and insects are showing presence of wings. The structure of wings is not similar, but the function is same, that is for flying. Okay, hence this is known as the analogous organ. And here in homologous organ, forelimbs of frog, lizard, bird, bat, whale, man is the example of homologous organ. Here in the first, forelimbs of these vertebrates are structurally similar but they are performing different functions. And here in analogous organ we can observe the wings of insects are expansion of the exoskeleton, whereas the wings of birds are modified forelimbs. That means structurally they are different from each other but the function is same, that is wings are used for flying. So here we can see the homologous organs, that is the forelimbs of these vertebrates which are structurally similar but they are performing different function, and hence these are known as the homologous organ. And here the wings of birds and insects are structurally dissimilar, as the wings of insects are the expansion of exoskeleton and wings of birds are the modified forelimbs. That means structure is different but function is the same, hence called as the analogous organ. Okay, here the homologous organs have a lot of significance in evolution, but analogous organs are not having significant role in evolution. That point also you have to remember, that homologous organs are having a lot of significance in the evolution, but the analogous organs are not having any role in the evolution. And the homologous organs are leading to divergent evolution or adaptive radiation, and analogous organs it is leading to convergent evolution. These two words are very important, that divergent evolution and convergent evolution. Homologous organs is responsible for divergent evolution. That means from a single ancestor the different kinds of organisms are evolved, that is known as the divergent evolution. But here in analogous we can't observe the evolution process, therefore it is known as the convergent evolution. Okay, let us see the examples in the detail. Homologous organs examples, here we can see in frogs the forelimbs are used for hopping, in lizard it is used for crawling, in birds and bats it is used for flying, in whales it is used for swimming, and in man it is used for gripping the objects. So you can see here the structure of the forelimb of these different organisms. Here lizard, horse, whale, bat, bird and man, these different vertebrate organisms are showing similar structure but the functions are here different, and hence they are known as the homologous organs. Second, here analogous organ, wings of insect, expansion of the exoskeleton, and wings of bird, modified forelimbs. So you can see here these are the different examples: insect, pterodactyl, bird and bat. All these organisms are showing presence of wings. The function is same but the structure of wing is different, and hence it is known as the analogous organs. Okay, now the another examples of this homologous organ, that is brain and heart in the vertebrate organism, and thorns and tendrils of the bougainvillea and cucurbita. So here this is example, this is the thorn, and in cucurbita we can observe the tendril. This is the tendril structure and this is the thorn. Means here the structure is same, the function of thorn is different, and the function of tendril is different. Or we can say in the vertebrate, heart and brain structure is same, but the functions of the heart and brain are different, and hence these are known as the examples of homologous organs. Okay. Next, other examples of the analogous organs. Here, eye of octopus from mollusca and mammals, then flippers of penguins, that is from bird, and dolphins in mammals, sweet potato, that is root modification, and potato, that is stem modification. So here we can see the structure of eye in octopus and in human. In these two structures we can see the function is same, but the basic structure in both these are different, and hence it is known as the analogous organ. You can see in the penguin and in the dolphin, the flippers are present which are functionally same, but they are structurally different. And in sweet potato and potato, both these are showing storage of food material. That means function is same, but actual structure is different. That sweet potato is the root modification and potato is the stem modification. So structurally they are different, but functionally they are similar. So in this way, these are the different examples that you have to remember for the examination. The different examples of the homologous organs, different examples of the analogous organs. Okay. Now the next point from this comparative anatomy, that is known as the vestigial organs or rudimentary organs. Here the organs which are functionless are known as the vestigial organs. Means in the body of an organism some organs are present, but these are very not very well developed, and these are functionless. Such organs are called as the vestigial organs, or they are also called as the rudimentary organs. So here these organs are well developed and functional in the ancestor, and this indicates the evolutionary line. That means the organisms which are showing some vestigial organs, and we can observe the ancestors of these organisms. In that ancestor organism, these vestigial organs are well developed and well functional. That means it is indicating the evolutionary line. For example, in man, following organs indicates is its use in the past. In human, we can observe there are some organisms which were used in the past, but nowadays during the course of evolution these organs are going to be vestigial. So the first organ, that is known as the cecum and vermiform appendix. Next, nictitating membrane present in the eye. Then coccyx or tail vertebrae present in the vertebral column, and wisdom teeth, that is third molar. These four are the vestigial organs or rudimentary organs that we can observe in the human body. These are not functioning at this stage, but in previous or in ancient human we can observe the functioning of these four organs. So let us see here the examples. The first, that is the cecum and vermiform appendix. It is functionless organ in the human, and it helps in the cellulose digestion in the herbivorous animals. So in ancient time, in human, for the cellulose digestion, the cecum or vermiform appendix was functional, but later on the organ cecum, you can see here in the diagram, this is the cecum part and this is the appendix, vermiform appendix. It is now non-functional in our body. In previous ancient humans we can observe functional this organ, but nowadays during the course of evolution the function of the cecum and vermiform appendix was not seen. Okay. Next, nictitating membrane. It is present in the human eyes and it is remnant of third eyelid. In ancient humans, we can observe the presence of this third eyelid, but nowadays it is not present, or it is very less developed and non-functional. That is known as the plica semilunaris. This is the remnant of third eyelid, that is known as the nictitating membrane. Okay. Then third, coccyx or tail vertebrae. It is the remnant of tail. During the course of evolution, tail in the human is not seen. So This is the remnant of tail we can observe, that is the coccyx, or it is also called as the tail vertebrae. And fourth, that is the wisdom teeth, third molar. So you can observe here, this is the wisdom tooth or third molar. In Marathi, we can call it as a akkaldad. Okay, it is non-functional in our body, though it is grown in our mouth or in our jaws. The third molar, that is akkaldad आपण त्याला म्हणतो, that is non-functional in our body. So these are the different examples of these vestigial organs that we can observe in the human body. In our ancestor, all these organs, that is cecum and vermiform appendix, nictitating membrane, coccyx and wisdom teeth, are functional, but in the course of evolution these organs are not developed, and nowadays these are the functionless organs, hence known as the vestigial organs. Okay, this is all about the comparative anatomy evidences. Now the last part or the last point of this lecture, that is molecular evidences. Very simple evidence is there. As we know, all living organisms are made up of cell, and cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life in all organisms, and this is known as the molecular evidence that all organisms are evolved from a common origin, because all organisms are showing presence of cell, and cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Secondly, similarities in proteins and genetic material performing a similar function among diverse organisms gives evidence of a common ancestry. That means here there are variety of organisms we can observe on this earth, but while studying of the structure of protein or the genetic material study, we can see the similarity in the protein and genetic material, and their functions are same in all these variety of organisms, and this is a very uh, evidence we can observe that from a common ancestor all these organisms are evolved. Okay, then basic metabolic activities also occur in similar manner in all organisms. So while studying the metabolism or the metabolic reactions in these organisms, we can observe that in all organisms the basic metabolic activities are occurring in the similar manner, and therefore we can say that all the organisms are evolved from a common ancestor. Okay, and last point here, that is ATP is used as the energy source in all the living organisms. So the organism may be from plant or fungi or animal or kingdom Monera protista. Every living organism is using the ATP as the energy source, and hence we can say that the different organisms are evolved from a common ancestor. So all these 4 points we can see the molecular level evidences we can observe. Okay, so in this way here we have completed the different evidences which were occurred, and they were discovered during the course of evolution. Okay, so remaining points we have to discuss in the next lecture. Till then, thank you.